In the history of biogeography, we will be talking about the Darwin and Wallace and how they came to know about the theory of evolution through the natural selection. In the early 19th century, the evolution was a slightly disreputable, anarchic, and nihilistic idea for the structure of society. The society was not very much complacent about the scientific idea, about a very scientific idea of evolution. The young Charles Darwin was cautious, secretive, and reluctant to publish his ideas by invoking evolution. So, evolution, the idea of evolution was so toxic that the young young Charles Darwin, even though he had very vast knowledge of the evolution and how does it work, he was very reluctant to publish that ideas until he was sure that he had gripped every possible aspect at that time. So the Darwin was a very affluent and very good scientist, naturalist, and he was interested in geology and natural history. He belonged to a good family, and he in 1831 he joined the crew of HMS Beagle to act as a companion to the captain and also as a naturalist for a 6-year voyage to the survey of coast of South America. So he has gone to a long journey across the seas to the South America to study the natural habitat, and he was a geologist as well, to study the geology of those areas as well. And during his voyage, he studied the mockingbird, finches, and fossil mammal, and took out all those collections, came back with them into his country, and other scientists also work on his ideas. And he gave the idea that living species were descended from the fossil species that had existed in the same part of the world was a straightforward explanation. So all those organisms that he was taking home, he said that only those or the relative of those organisms were living and that in those particular areas. And the simplest explanation was that all of those organisms were having a single common ancestor. So organisms were related to one another by evolution, and this was the idea that was given by the Alfred Russel Wallace. And thinking along the exactly the same lines as Darwin, he was first to publish that closely related species were often also found close to one another geographically. So just like the Darwin was saying that organisms are related because they are geographically close to each other, they are evolving from the ancient fossils that were present in that place earlier, or in the geological spaces of that particular area. The Alfred Russel Wallace was another scientist who had the same ideas at the same time. So a letter from the Wallace was the point which to Darwin, then working in the East Indies, stimulated Darwin to publish his ideas after many years of agonizing over its possible hostile reception by the vociferously anti-evolutionary sections of British society. So as we have discussed earlier, that the evolution was not a very good idea to float in the conservative British society. And it was the letter from the Wallace who had the same ideas, and both of them published a paper which we will be discussing also, that this idea is true. This idea, I am working on this idea, you are working on this idea. So we are working independently, and only possible explanation is that we are reaching on the same point, that this idea has some logical explanation. So in the case of both worker, it was the observation of pattern of distribution of individual species of animal. The Darwin has his own studies, and in which he studied about the distribution of animals, and Wallace has his own ideas that how animals work and how they are distributed among different areas in the earth. And they were working essentially on their biogeography, and it was the biogeography that led them to consider the possibility of evolution. and their great discovery, which we call as the natural selection. The idea of natural selection was announced by short papers from both Darwin and Wallace, reading at a meeting of Linnean Society of London on 30th June 1858. Darwin quickly went on to publish his great book next year. So you see that in 1858 they gave out some small papers on it, and Darwin published a book next year on the idea of natural selection. So the name of the book was On the Origin of Species, and the Darwin has spent 40 years after his voyage in detailed research on many other areas of biology that provided evidence for the evolution. So he worked a lot of time on these ideas, and he was extremely logical and persuasive by collecting every possible knowledge available at that time to support his ideas of the evolution on the natural selection. And then there was another scientist named as Charles Lyell. He argued that many lines of evidence suggest that the Earth must be many millions years old. So it is in line with the earlier discoveries of the Wallace as well as the Darwin, because for the evolution a lot of time is required, and the British geologists, it gave them some much more worth the ideas of evolution by saying that the Earth is millions of years old, and discovering was only in the 20th century that we discovered that we realized that Earth is several billion years old, and the reason that we have so much diversity on Earth and due to the evolution, because it had a lot of time to develop into the new species into the different areas of the world. And then there are the two different paradigms of geology, and the other one is of the biology. The plate tectonic is the central paradigm of the earth sciences, and the theory of evolution is the of biological sciences. So these two paradigms are connected by the biogeography. The biogeography provides a striking example of concordance of the implication of these two paradigms. So these two paradigms join together into the biogeography. The earth sciences and the biological sciences, they combine at the biogeography.